What's up, guys? 1-1 yesterday. Obviously, not exactly what I wanted. It's a small loss, but the White Sox game went the way that I thought, with Drew Thorpe putting together a nice start, going fairly deep into the game, but not getting a lot of run support. Hoeing only had like the opener type of start, like I expected. Marlins brought in their bullpen, and they gave up just enough runs to allow the White Sox to get that win. So that was good. The under in the Brewers Dodgers had no chance. It was weird. Glasnow gave up like 5 runs in one inning in the third or fourth. Not something you expect to be happening. He was actually losing the game up against Savale for a while. I think there were maybe multiple unearned runs came home or something like that. There was at least one error going on there. It was just something really weird. It was a situation where Milwaukee had, I think, 5 runs on 3 hits at that point. Not something you expect. And the Dodgers wound up still winning the game. It wound up being a 13-run game, and the 13 runs were scored on 14 hits or something like that. So it was basically every base runner that got on base scored, which is not exactly what you expect to happen. It's a loss for sure. It was not a good play, but I think the score looks worse than it should have looked, at least. Both starting pitchers actually didn't do that badly in the game. If you look at their like strikeout numbers and strikeout to walk ratio and whatever, and how deep they went into the game, whatever. We move on to today. I only have one play today, and it's in that same series. Though we have some interesting things going on here, some interesting leans that I guess I would say I have. I do slightly lean to, Chicago White Sox again, because it's Garrett Crochet up against Yanni Chirinos. Crochet is the much better pitcher. He's the best pitcher on the White Sox staff. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball, really. Flying under the radar because he's on this awful White Sox team, but the books know how good he is, and they're lining the White Sox at like -1, somewhere between -150 and -160, so I can't do that. I can't lay that price on the road there. It's actually gone down a little bit, and it looks like the White Sox are actually public, because I guess the public is on to Crochet as well. And I don't mean they're old ladies knitting. And Yanni Chirinos on the other side. It looks like 78% of the cash is actually on Miami in that one. Kind of interesting. Chirinos, he's like a 30-year-old. His stats just throughout his career have not been very impressive. So I think it is a huge pitching mismatch, but you're paying a big price for that. If I was going to play that game, I would look to probably limit it to first 5 innings, look to limit it to the starting pitching matchup. But I don't know. I just don't want to lay a price like that in either case. Even though the first 5 innings, you might get a little bit of a better price. You could lay like a half run line maybe, but I still don't want to quite do that with the way the market looks. Market looks like it's against me in a lot of these games, man, which against where I would lean, which is kind of keeping me off of some of these. Like, I do actually like the under in Toronto, Seattle. And Seattle's a pitching friendly park. You get a lot of unders in Seattle. Seattle has actually maybe the best starting rotation in baseball. Seattle kind of under the radar, but their starting pitching rotation is really good. They almost have like no bad starters in the rotation. And in this game, Emerson Hancock is coming off the DL, so he's coming back for Seattle. He's a decent young pitcher. His stats don't make him look that good. I think his ERA is like in the 4s and like a 1.2 whip, but I've been talking about him. I think he is actually a pretty good young pitcher. And then on the other side, Yariel Rodriguez pitching for Toronto. I think he's a rookie in Major League Baseball, though he's a little bit older. He's 27. I think he was pitching in like the leagues in Cuba for a while. Now he's over here. I've talked about him on the show as well. He had some stumbling blocks earlier this season, but he came back. They put him back in the rotation. He came back and had a good start against a pretty potent Houston lineup. So that is kind of a good sign for Rodriguez moving forward, that he may be able to stick in the rotation and may be able to do this. And the reason I like the under in that one, although I'm not going to quite get there with it because of the market, the way the market looks, but both starting pitchers are these young pitchers that have decent stuff, and neither opposing lineup, I think, has really ever seen these pitchers before. So I think it's an advantage to the starting pitchers there, but the line looks like it's moved up from 8 to 8.5 juice to the under, and I see 68% of the tickets on the over, but 83% of the cash on the over. I don't agree with that, with where the cash is. I do like the under in Toronto and Seattle. You're probably not going to really find a situation where I'm going to come in and play an over in a game that's being played at Seattle, at Safeco Field or whatever it's called now. It's a very under-conducive environment. Last night's game was also an under. I don't think either team really used that much of their bullpen. last night. So lean to the under there. And I also lean to the under. And the market does actually look to be in agreement with this one, but I don't quite want to get there with the under in Philly, Atlanta, which seems dangerous because both of these teams have good offenses. And the public is coming in to the tune of 63% of the tickets on the over in that one, but 59% of the cash on the under. And it looks like it's just sitting at 8.5 juice to the under. I agree with the under. This is Ranger Suarez. He's been pitching really well this year out of Philadelphia's rotation. Unexpectedly good, because I always kind of thought he was kind of a mediocre pitcher. And for him to all of a sudden, like in his late 20s, start throwing like an ace is a little bit weird to see, but he's been keeping it up. So I mean, I guess there is something to that. And Atlanta's hitting numbers aren't great against him. He holds them like a 265 batting average, which is pretty decent for him. It's not too bad, but the Atlanta hitters have seen Suarez a lot, though, so there is familiarity there. And on the other side, Schwellenbach pitching for Atlanta. He's one of their young arms that they brought up to fill some of the holes in the rotation because they have a bunch of injuries. I think he does actually have pretty good stuff, though, and they're leaving him around in the rotation, although maybe it's because they don't really have any other options with all these injuries. But he's not that bad, and I think Philly has not seen him before. So I do lean to the under because you have one proven good pitcher in Suarez up against Schwellenbach, who's a young guy who's kind of an unknown but has decent stuff and is facing hitters who are not familiar with him, although his stats this year do concern me a little bit with a high ERA in the fives and a whip of almost 1.29. But other than that 6-run performance that he allowed against the Red Sox, that was his worst start. He hasn't allowed more than 4 earned runs in any game. He's been fairly consistent, faced a couple other pretty good offenses. And his 32-9 strikeout walk ratio and 31 2/3 innings pitched is pretty good. So there are some indicators in his stats there that he's not that bad. The game I'm actually going to play, though, I said what it was going to be. You probably know where I'm going. It's Milwaukee and the Dodgers, and I think we're getting some value in this one, man. And I think it's value in going against where I think the public is probably going to be coming in, which is they're coming in on the Dodgers, man, because it is the Dodgers, even though Milwaukee, also known as a good team, they have good numbers, but Dodgers, big market team, public team, everybody considers them to be one of the best teams in baseball, and they are, but this matchup I don't think is very good for the Dodgers. Dodgers have 68% of the tickets, but 76% of the cash right now on the other side on Milwaukee. So it looks like we have a pros versus Joes situation here. I think the pitching matchup kind of tells you what you need to know here, and I think it is heavily in favor of Milwaukee, actually. The line has gone down from -116 to -106, so reverse line movement, too. So we have the public coming in on the Dodgers. The line has moved down on the Dodgers, and Milwaukee has the cash on their side. It looks like the more significant money indicating on Milwaukee. Like I said, I agree with it. The Dodgers won last night, so perhaps that means maybe the Dodgers will take their foot off the gas a little bit. I think we could probably still go full game on this. I think as far as the bullpens are concerned, both teams kind of use some of their better relievers. Dodgers, it was a close game late into the game. Dodgers used Phillips, who I believe is their closer. Brewers used a couple of their better relievers too. So bullpen situation, I think, is a little bit of a wash here, although maybe the Dodgers bullpen is slightly better and maybe slightly less used, although they did use their closer yesterday. So if you wanted to go first 5 on this, I wouldn't blame you either, because a lot of this has to do with the starting pitching matchup. But I think Milwaukee is kind of in the bounce back spot here and going to be motivated to win this game. So I think the situation calls for it. Full game, I think you get a little bit of a better price as well on Milwaukee, because I think the books know that Freddie Peralta is the better of these two starting pitchers. So if you go first 5 inning on this, I think you're paying a favorite price on Milwaukee, upwards of like -115 or maybe even -120. Excuse me. But if you're playing the full game, you're getting a cheaper price. And I still think that that's where the value is there, even though the Dodgers do have the somewhat better bullpen. I think we'll still take the shot on Milwaukee full gamer. But you can still, on the full game, the Dodgers are still a favorite, but in the first 5 innings, they're an underdog. So that's the books telling you they think the starting pitching advantage is heavily in favor of Milwaukee, and I'm just going to ride that for the full game. Like I said, get a little bit better odds on this. You get Milwaukee at like -102, which is still an underdog price because the books are charging you that extra juice. Milwaukee's somewhere around like -110 to -115. So still the favorite on the full game. But Freddie Peralta, and he's the best pitcher in Milwaukee's rotation, man. He's got a 3.83 ERA, 1.13 whip. Good stuff. A huge strikeout rate at 120 strikeouts in 94 innings pitched, 33 walks. So the walks are a little bit high, but the strikeout number is crazy high. So it's a very good strikeout walk ratio. Only 73 hits allowed in those 94 innings too. He's been doing well. He's been dealing it. He did have a stumbling block earlier in June against Detroit where he allowed 5 walks in that game. But had only 3 strikeouts. If you throw that out, though, he's got a, a 35 to 8 strikeout walk ratio other than that in the month of June. If you take that one bad performance out, and he did allow 6 runs against Cincinnati, but in that game, he got inexplicably hit for 10 hits in that one. He still had a 6-1 strikeout walk ratio. So he's still been striking guys out at a decent rate. He's had a few good starts in a row again now. So I think he's back in rhythm. He's a good pitcher, man. And against the Dodgers, he's had pretty good success. We have an all right sample size to look at here. The Dodgers hitters are only 8 for 48 lifetime off of Peralta with 2 doubles, a home run, 4 RBIs, 16 to 7 strikeout walk ratio. So it's a high strikeout rate again, somewhat high walks, but kind of in line with what Peralta does. That amounts to the Dodgers having a 167 batting average off him, 585 OPS. So weak offensive stats for the Dodgers against Peralta. Peralta's a good pitcher, man. And on the other side, you got the older journeyman, basically, at this point, James Paxton. And I've talked about him on the show, man. I think his reputation kind of precedes him, where people think that he's still a good pitcher and think that he's the pitcher he was when he had those good years not too long ago, really, back on Seattle. But post-Seattle, he has not been very good, man, with the Yankees. And then he was back on Seattle very briefly. Then my Red Sox didn't do well there, and he's not doing well with the Dodgers either. He's approaching the end of his career, and he's not a guy that comes in and has like really hard stuff and blows people away. He like relies on his command, and it seems to be suffering a bit. He's got a 4.28 ERA, which doesn't look good, but the 1.41 whip is more alarming than the ERA. Like that whip getting close to 1.5, putting 1.5 base runners on per inning, that's not good, man. And that indicates that there are some problems here and that he could be allowing more damage than he even is here. So he's probably been able to get out of some jams. I mean, he is still a veteran pitcher, so there is that. But his stats are just really bad this year, other than the hits allowed are pretty low. But he only has 53 strikeouts, and he's allowed 38 walks and 75 2/3. That's not good. That number of innings pitched isn't that high either. So he hasn't really been going that deep into games. His starts have been spread out a bit because he's an older man. Doesn't go deep into these games, really. He's given up only 69 hits, so that's the one good stat that he has. They're giving up fewer than 1 hit per inning, but that means with his whip being that high, that means his command is really bad, and his walk number is maybe even worse than it might appear on the surface. 38 walks in those innings, that's bad. And again, like I said, only 53 strikeouts. That strikeout walk ratio is very bad, even though it was actually way worse in April. So yes, he has been better after the month of April as far as the walk numbers are concerned, but still a bit alarming. He's coming off a real bad start against the Giants where he gave up 9 earned runs off of 12 hits in 4 innings, which you could say, well, yeah, that means he's going to bounce back. Sure. I mean, I don't think he's going to have a start that was as bad as that one against the Giants, but he's facing an offense that's pretty potent here. And like, even if he doesn't do as bad as that, like, is he going to do well enough to win this game against a pitcher who's really good on the other side and against a good offense? I don't think so. I mean, we don't need him to be as bad as he was in those couple of worst starts that he's had. We just need him to be bad enough that the Dodgers aren't able to win this game, which he could be somewhere in the middle there, man. He could be better than he was in his last outing and still not great in this game. So that's what I'm banking on. The one other thing is that Milwaukee hasn't really seen him much, so that concerns me a little bit. There is not much history here at all to look at. Only 2 of their hitters have seen him. They're 2 for 10 off him with a double, 1 RBI, 4-2 strikeout walk ratio. It's a 200 batting average, 633 OPS. Such a small sample size and so few hitters have seen him that I think there's not much we can take away from that. And I think the unfamiliarity aspect of it kind of gets thrown out the window a little bit when you have an older pitcher like this who's been in the league for so long, and guys know what he throws. Like, they know what to expect. So I think even when you haven't seen him in a live game environment, you know so much about the guy at this point that I think it tends to be a little bit easier to adjust and be able to hit him. So that's the one play here, man. We got market agreement here. I think the starting pitching matchup is actually a mismatch, and we're getting like some nice value on the play here on the team that has the much better starting pitcher, who really isn't a bad team. They're a pretty good team, but it's just that the team that they're playing against is also good and get like a lot of the public action and tend to get overvalued a lot, which is the Dodgers. So I think it's a good spot to come in and play the Milwaukee Brewers here, -102. That's going to do it for me, man. Have a good Saturday. Peace.